Hello there! Welcome back to another adventure in the Andromeda universe. This time looking at the sister ship of the Andromeda herself, her big sister, the Pax Magellanic. If you don't remember the ship, don't worry, it only appeared in one episode, but she was a beautiful gold starship of the old High Guard. This vessel was older than the Andromeda, but was still state of the art. We'll quickly run down the ship's specs before we get into the vessel's history, shall we? In terms of dimensions, the vessel had the exact same dimensions as the Andromeda herself, at a length of 1301 meters with a beam of 976, with an overall draft of 325 meters. The ship was built at Earth, the Newport Orbital Shipyards. It contained 36 slip fighters and 12 drones for defense. It was a very heavily armed starship with a large crew, basically. Its captain was Warwick Pierce of the High Guard. The vessel was also equipped with anti-proton cannon point defense laser systems, as well as the infamous Nova bombs. For defense, the vessel had a blade of armor, additionally reactive armor, high tension armor, as well as the unusual defense, which was kind of a signature system of High Guard vessels known as the battle blades. The ship was of course aligned to the system's commonwealth and the High Guard. The ship was likely named, based on its name, Pax, meaning peace, and Magellanic, very likely named after the Magellanic Cloud, which is basically a region of space. The Magellanic Cloud in and of itself is named after the explorer Ferdinand Magellan, so in a sense the ship is Peace Ferdinand Magellan. During its first mission, the Magellanic saved Princess Sucharit from the Magog, earning them accolades from the veteran emperors and the triumvirate heads of the Commonwealth itself. But it was during the Nietzschean rebellion, like many other vessels in the High Guard, that the vessel would earn its distinction and its place in both history and infamy. During the conflict, they would be dispatched to the Herodotus system to reinforce a beleaguered line of defense there. The ship's captain, Captain Warwick Pierce, would take a Lancer division down to the surface, and slowly but surely pretty much the entire crew would filter down there until the point was that only a handful of personnel was still aboard the Magellanic, which was a bit of a problem. Realizing that they were about to be overrun, the captain ordered the Magellanic to self-destruct to prevent it falling into the hands of the Nietzscheans and being used against the Commonwealth. But here was the problem. The Commonwealth had rules, fraternizing with the ship's AI kind of against them. The ship's AI, Maggie, had fallen in love with Captain Pierce, and she was despondent at the idea that he would give such an order for her to kill herself, and she wanted to go down with him, but he'd refused. So the ship made flesh stayed aboard the ship, and as a result had a little bit of a temper tantrum when he gave this order, resulting in the emotional response to eject the slipstream core, detonating it, resulting in the destruction of the planet. This of course left the Magellanic without a slipstream drive, and it had superficial damage to its other engines, meaning it couldn't really go anywhere and kind of got stuck. Now there is a bit of an issue here where we don't know exactly what happened next. What happened? It's likely the ship simply hid from any forces that were left in the system, Nietzschean or High Guard, and no one apparently ever came looking for it. But not all the crew were down on the surface when this happened. Exactly what happened to them, their fates, is not known. It's possible the skeleton crew were killed in the ensuing explosion, or perhaps the Magellanic herself, in her despair, killed her remaining crew. The Avatar and ship would eventually decide to change their appearance. They'd always been known as Maggie to the others, and was seen as a big sister ship to the other vessels, particularly in the Glorious Heritage class, with Andromeda's Romy ship made flesh referring to her as the first of the Glorious Heritage class, meaning it could have been the first prototype vessel in the class, or at the very least the first commissioned ship, or she could have simply meant it was the oldest serving vessel, and any ship that was older had been since subsequently decommissioned. Not entirely clear. I choose to interpret it as the first commissioned class. That's me personally. Now, with the death of her crew and her basically going a little bit mad, she would spend the rest of her days within this system, earning the nickname the Ghost of Tau Ceti 6, a legend that somewhat gave Seamus Harper the creeps, with the lovely little adage that went along with it: "It glitters like gold, but if you see it, you never come back." Usually dismissed as simply a sort of spacer's siren of sorts. Captain Hunt, of course, didn't really pay much attention to it, but rumour had it, by 300 years later, that this was still some kind of lost Highguard ship, which prompted the Andromeda to come looking for it. By the time they found it, they found the ship relatively intact with a non-functional slipstream which had been sealed off, supposedly damaged. The crew were immortal, some kind of side effect of what had happened to the planet, and the ship's commanding officer was now Lieutenant Jill Pierce. Pierce was actually, again, spoilers, the ship made flesh. Maggie had changed her name to Jill, adopting the appearance and identity of a former member of the crew. Why? Because she's crazy. It also meant that Andromeda didn't immediately recognize her, and they didn't know that the crew were actually not the crew, but actually a bunch of androids that she'd been building to help maintain ship systems, repair the vessel, as well as keep her company in her long, nightmarish isolation. The vessel's core AI itself went completely insane, isolating itself from the rest of the crew and even its own avatar. And when they attempted to touch the mind of the AI, it resisted and rejected anyone that tried to enter it, forcing Romy out initially, but eventually softening to her and showing her what had happened. But with a few tweaks, obviously it changed the appearance again of itself to Jill in those flashbacks, so you never really saw that it was really Maggie who'd been trying to get down to the surface with her lover, or at least the man she loved, Captain Pierce. And when the crew finally discovered what had happened, that they'd ejected the slipstream core, that is what had destroyed the planet, because according to Tyr, as he put it, the Nietzscheans wouldn't destroy a habitable planet. They'd conquer it, or they'd live there themselves. Nietzscheans did have weapons that could destroy planets, but they're not likely to use them. It seemed unlikely during this battle, considering they were winning as well, for them to have done such a thing, indicating that it was actually the Highguard and the Commonwealth who destroyed the planet. Hunt was not exactly against accepting this possibility, and he kept it in mind, knowing Nietzscheans as he knew them. But all the same, what exactly had happened, he wasn't sure, but he would soon learn. That the ghost was an echo of its former self. It had forgotten its Highguard duty. They attempted to erase the core AI of the ship, but failed. In the end, they ended up in a battle with the Magellanic that opened fire on the Andromeda. When the Andromeda returned fire with only the intention of disabling the ship's weapons, the Magellanic had turned off her point defense systems, meaning that every missile impacted target. Andromeda, of course, would expect that some of the missiles would have been disabled and shut down, meaning that not all would have got through, so it fired more than it needed, obviously. And with all of them getting through, the Magellanic went into a cascade of destruction. What should have just been minor damage was compounded by multiple additional missile impacts that resulted in the ship's destruction. And after 300 years of, quite frankly, going mad inside of an asteroid field of its own creation, the graveyard of its crew, the Magellanic finally found a little bit of rest. It was a shame, because at one time the Magellanic had been a great ship, beautiful and gold in coloration, very distinctive for the Glorious Heritage class. It's the only gold coloured hull we ever saw. We do see a few variants of the Glorious Heritage class throughout time, as of course the Highguard made periodic upgrades and modifications and updates to these vessels. The hull coloration was probably not really so much an update, more of an aesthetic choice, but it could have indicated some kind of coating or armour plate on the outer hull that was different to that of other ships. Possibly. It simply could indicate they used a different metal to coat the ship, or it could have been as simple as they painted it a different colour. Maybe it actually did have gold plastered on the outer hull. We'll never actually know. We do know that she was a beautiful ship and would have been a great addition if they'd have been able to either, stop it being insane, or erase the core AI, replace it with maybe a copy of Andromeda with a few tweaks, and they could have doubled the size of their fleet and efforts to restore the system's commonwealth. But unfortunately, that wasn't going to be the outcome here. But the Magellanic, as again to say, in her day, was a fantastic ship of the line and should be remembered for her accomplishments, and a cautionary tale that you don't boink your ship. That's a bad thing. It might get your crew killed. With all that said, like, share and subscribe, comment down below, hit the bell notification if you want to stay up to date with any videos that come out on this channel, and there are some special ones coming that I've got planned. Can't really go into those just yet, but there's something special coming. And yeah, that's the end of this video. I'd just like to say a thank you to everyone for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoy making these. If you did enjoy it, please consider giving a like, share and a subscribe, and maybe checking out the other videos on the screen right now, and in the description box below there are links to my other social media accounts.